welcome. Thanks for being here. We are going to do a little session for you guys now on Veterans Resource Centers on your campuses. My name is Mike Deere. I'm with the Chancellor's Office. I have a couple of panelists with me I'd like to introduce. I have Terrence Nelson from Saddleback College, Jane Mathis from Santa Ana College, and all of a sudden I thought San Antonio College in my head, and I thought, uh-oh. And then we have Dan Torres from Butte College. So we're all going to spend a little bit of time talking to you guys about some of the programs, and then we should have time afterwards for questions and answers from any of you in the audience. I want to start out just talking with you guys a little bit, if I can not have technical difficulties here. Well, let me just start talking, and we'll see if that comes along. So I just want to touch base briefly. I'm at the Chancellor's Office. I want to talk to you a little bit about what we're doing at the Chancellor's Office to see kind of what our numbers look like. You're hearing the Chancellor make some quotes about the veterans that we have on our campuses, and 75% are attending community colleges out of the 3 public segments of California higher education. So the way we collect data right now is through 2 methods. We get a report from the VA office in San Diego. Many of you probably know Shane Farabee. He is gracious enough to share data with us, and we're very appreciative of that. He sends us information, and this report provides us with a snapshot of those students on campuses in California that are receiving education benefits during the month of April. So it's a snapshot of April only. So it's only those student veterans who are receiving education benefits. So we know that we have a lot more veterans on our campuses, more than just those who are receiving educational benefits. But this at least gives us a picture. We have data going back for several years on this. Oops, I started talking about the reports in the wrong order. We have several years of data on this, so at least in and of itself, it's a consistent picture. And what we're seeing is, not surprisingly, great increases, and we're expecting that to continue. The other way we collect data is we have our financial aid directors work with our campus certifying officials. Historically, there's a link between financial aid and veterans because of veterans benefits being part of the financial aid FAFSA application, as well as a resource in financial aid. That is no longer the case. They changed that a few years ago with the reauthorization of the Higher Ed Act, some of the financial aid guidelines. So that link is not necessarily there anymore, but historically that's where we have a connection. So we have our certifying officials report to our financial aid directors the number of unduplicated veterans receiving education benefits for the year. And that's where we get the figure of 46,000 that you may have heard quoted either last night or this morning. 46,000 veterans in our system receiving education benefits. So those are helpful numbers, but they're not, like I said, all-encompassing because of the fact that it doesn't count veterans who aren't receiving benefits. So we've added into the Chancellor's Office MIS reporting system 2 data elements to be able to capture information on all student veterans, and that went into effect starting with this year's reporting cycle for last year's data. So it's optional the first year, it'll be mandatory next year, and we'll be collecting more robust data now on all veterans on campus, not just those receiving benefits. But again, that's only for students who identify themselves as a veteran. I mean, we're still going to have students who don't indicate that they're a veteran on there, or we're learning that we have some female veterans that may not identify themselves as a veteran. And so we need to look at the way that we pose that question and ask, have you served in the military, and hopefully have better data. But that's just a brief update on kind of what numbers we have, the numbers that you're hearing, where they come from and why we have them, and why we know that they're not all-encompassing and super robust, so why we're going to be collecting data in different ways in the future and hopefully have better data. Is there a question right here?
Yeah, I was just curious. Earlier there was a slide in one of the presentations whereby they were projecting what we may see in terms of veterans coming into California and such. Does St. Chancellor do any work as it relates to kind of external work in terms of what we may be seeing in California and
the question is a good question. Do we know what we're going to be seeing with the drawdown of troops? Do we know what we're going to be seeing coming back to the different regions and community colleges? And no, unfortunately, we don't know that. I'm not quite sure how to go about obtaining that. I heard the statistic as well. I don't know where it comes from. Maybe we can talk afterward and see if we can.
I think just in general, as many of us are talking about developing more robust services, possibly veteran centers and such, and we're looking for external funding or trying to make the case within our institution to have that broad data to tell the story. You know, certainly what we have right now in terms of enrollment, what some of the trends are historically, but what we anticipate in the next, 2, 5, 10 years. I think that helps tell the story as well.
Absolutely, I fully agree. And that's one of the reasons we bring this up. I mean, we're seeing tremendous growth over the last couple of years. And while I don't have statistics of how much we expect to see that grow, we know anecdotally that it's going to keep growing, tremendously. So it's just going to go up and up. But you raise a good point. A question in the back?
There is that information on some of the VA websites.
Okay,
that you
'cause
can find.
yeah, I mean,
And it does individualize it by region.
And that's from the VA?
Yes.
Okay, so
It depends on the MIS system that you're using within our own college systems. What type of data you say new elements come in? What are those new elements that you're incorporating?
that's a great question. The question was, what are the 2 new data elements? I don't remember the numbers or the names of them. For those of you who are familiar with MIS, the elements are coded like M02 or V01 or whatever, so I don't have that part memorized, but there's 2 new data elements, and it is, have you ever served in the military, is the first question, and the second question is, have you ever, are you the dependent of someone who has served in the military? And, yeah, sorry. I see the look on your face, and it gives me pause. And also then it made me think, I'm being filmed, and I just paused right in the middle of this presentation. So let's talk more about the data elements after this.
Region 8 that gave you the information that we had collected out of Cerritos, and I think that there's so much more information that can be easily collected through the Chancellor's office, and I'm just a little bit wondering why they're only choosing to do a couple more data elements when there's tons of it there in each college out of the system.
Yeah, that's a valid point. The question was, there's a lot more data. Why aren't we collecting it? So the answer is the same as it was at that Region 8 meeting, that this was already decided, even before we had that meeting. So, this has been in the works for a couple of years. It takes time to roll this kind of stuff out. But I'm definitely open to your feedback, and I can take it back to the office. So let's talk more about that. Okay, so now I want to give a little bit of background on numbers. There's been some good points raised, so we can talk further about that at the end. But let me jump into why we're here, which is the Veterans Resource Centers. We have many of our campuses have great Veterans Resource Centers. Some of them are here. We can't have all of them here, so we've chosen a group to represent, but by no means does that mean that we don't recognize that there are other great Veterans Resource Centers out there on other campuses. I want to talk a little bit about the Veterans Resource Center project that happened through the Chancellor's office to start, and then I'll turn it over to these guys. We had, through DSPS, and Jane might be able to speak more to this if she'd like. Through DSPS, we had a push from the High Tech Center Training Unit, which is in the Foothill De Anza District. We had a surplus of equipment and a grant through the Chancellor's office to get some software and equipment and training and support for colleges, for a limited number of colleges, if they would pledge space and some components to put Veterans Resource Centers on their colleges. So this project came out of Disabled Student Services and Programs. Guyra Dietrich and Myra Lurch and Scott Valverde in the Chancellor's office really kind of spearheaded this. They worked together. Because of the surplus of equipment, they did an RFP process. Some colleges were chosen, and they were able to push equipment and software and training and ongoing support out to 12 colleges for those colleges agreeing to enhance or put a Veterans Resource Center on their campus. So that started before I came to the Chancellor's office, which was last year. It was fairly new at that time. everybody has rolled out their Veterans Resource Centers mostly at this point in this project, but I just wanted to talk about it because it was really a positive project, and it really kind of increased awareness of the importance of the Veterans Resource Centers. You know, some schools already had them, but for those that didn't, this was really a good way to kind of, like I said, increase awareness and get more out there. Question?
Yes, and this may be sidetracking, but how are those colleges chosen?
The question was, how are those colleges chosen? There was an RFP process, request for participation, I believe is what that stands for. So that, I was not around for that, but it's a pretty standard, you know, apply, and we're going to have these criteria, and then we're going to choose you. Now, I can talk a little bit about some of those criteria, though. I have that in here. They had to commit to providing these 3 components that are listed on here: academics, camaraderie, and wellness. And these services, access to and assistance with assistive technology, that was the specialized software. Kurzweil, is anybody familiar with Kurzweil? Yeah, so that's the software. Academic counseling and tutoring, peer support and mentoring, and financial aid and vets benefits information and application assistance. And they also had to dedicate a minimum of, I think it was 450 or 500 square feet, somewhere in that range, which really is not a lot of square footage. I mean, that's a small room, but that was dedicate a minimum of space and, what's the word I'm looking for? Commit to providing these services and these components, and tell us how you're going to do that in your application. And through that RFP process, reviewing those applications, those colleges were chosen. And that kind of was, like I said, was a big push, and that's a little background on the Chancellor's Office version of the VRC project through the HTCTU, and now I'm tired of talking. So I'm going to pass it on to these guys over here. We're going to start with Dan Torres from Butte.
Hi, my name is Dan Torres. Before we get started, is there any veterans in the audience? Can I have you stand up and be recognized? Thank you for your service. When we started the VRC, it happened back in 2008. What happened was we have the director of DSPS approached me, I'm the certified official at Butte College, and asked, what can we do to help veterans out? Well, I thought, what happened when I got out? When I got out in 2000, I came to Butte College and was lost, totally lost. Even before I started school, I was depressed because I lost my identity, who I was. I lost sight of my goal. Most of the veterans that come out need direction. So what I told the director, Rich Dunn, I said, we need some type of office that can come in and more of a networking type service. Sorry, I'm a little nervous. I'm not really good on presentations. But I was just blanked out. I'm sorry. When I'm a certified official, we started at Butte College. When they started their benefits for the GI Bill, all we did was hand out forms and said, do this, do that. That's not really helpful for veterans. They need guidance. So when we established our Veterans Resource Center, we started with 450 square feet. We had 2 computers, 2 couches, and a printer and a scanner. You would be amazed at how many veterans showed up for our VRC, okay? If you build it, they will come. We started with what I thought we needed in the Veterans Office, but you have to ask your veterans what they need. Do not come up with ideas of your own. Ask them, engage with them. That center was highly used. Veterans brought in pictures, they put on the wall. They brought in their DVD players, they brought in DVDs, PlayStation 2. They knew that center was theirs, and they protected it. And when he came in, they'd stare at him like, okay, who are you? Oh, you're a veteran? Great. Welcome. We'd have veterans sit around helping other veterans in math, just sitting around, just tutoring each other. And that's what I loved about the VRC. That's what I love about the VRC now. The campus noticed how well the VRC was being used and actually give us a bigger building. Now, our Veterans Center is 1,300 square feet. We have 14 computers now versus the 2 computers. We have a TV room for the 2 couches, a DVD player, PlayStation 2, big screen TV. I'm still working on getting cable because I want to watch Monday Night Football or something in there. We have a study room, but it's amazing to have that center there. And I honestly wish, instead of me being here, we had the students here that could vouch what that center means to them. We have 4 WorkStudy employees. I run the Veterans Resource Center as well as doing the certifying. And that actually is pretty hard to do. It's tough to run the center and be a certifying official. We're still looking to bring in a counselor. That's what we need. I'm envious of some of these other schools that have their own counselors. We're working on that. But some of the services we provide are peer support and mentoring, adaptive software, the Kurzweil. If no one's seen that software, that's a great piece of software. I mean, I love it, just working with it, because you can scan your textbook and it reads it to you. It's so awesome. Again, what I want to say is ask students what they need. What they told us, this is before the 9/11 GI Bill, they said, I need a graphing calculator. It's expensive. They're like $80 and $100 for a graphing calculator. So what we did is we asked the school for a donation, and they actually donated 10 graphing calculators that we give out at each semester, and they return them back to us, and we give them out again for the next students that use them. We found that at our school, we're about 15 miles for the nearest city. So what we like to have is a locker. We have lockers out of our office where we issue those out to students to use. Instead of carrying all their bags everywhere, they just put them in their locker, and the students love it. Textbook exchange. I don't know about you guys, but I hate when the students have to sell back their books and they don't get anything for them. So what we ask the veterans to do is pretty much help each other out, sell them back to other veterans, or just donate to our office, because we actually give those textbooks to use in the VRC. We used to have, we have math books that we issue out in the Veterans Resource Center. They can't take them home, but at least they can use them in the office. We offer free printing and copying. We do a lot of referrals. What I like to tell people is, look, I'm not an expert in all things. I'd rather give you a referral to someone else who knows more about the information. The worst thing you can do to anyone is give out the wrong information. That's the worst thing you can do. And I highly believe that. When you're dealing with veterans, you want to be straight up with them. You want to tell them how it is. This is the way it's going to happen. Because if you don't, if you sugarcoat it, they don't like that. Be honest. We have presenters come in, and what I like to do is ask the presenters for the campus to come in, financial aid, DSPS. A lot of veterans don't use the services that are on campus already. When I took over, I checked our files, and about 75% of the veterans didn't apply for financial aid. A lot of them thought they didn't qualify because they told you can't double dip. Federal funds, GI Bill, Pell Grant. Others didn't want to deal with the paperwork. They filled out the application but never followed through on it. Others didn't qualify because of their income. They were in the military and they didn't qualify. What we do in the office is help them with that paperwork. We ask the unemployment office to come in And that's a big service for veterans because they don't realize they can get unemployment benefits and go to school at the same time. Again, I don't like to give out information as far as unemployment, so we have a great unemployment officer come in and do presentations, and that's a big hit with the veterans. This is our center here. On the left-hand side was when we opened back in 2008. And again, these veterans really, really appreciate coming in, hanging out with other veterans. On the right-hand side is our new space now. Plenty of computers, plenty of space for them to hang out, do their work, and get help. The veterans did their job, okay? They went to war and stood up for us. Now it's time for us to stand up for them. I'm going to conclude my presentation with a quote from JFK. As we express our gratitude, we must never forget the highest appreciation is not to utter words, but to live by them. So I hope you all take something from the summit and start something at your school. That's the best thing you can do. Thank you.
Counseling for your vets, and who does your counseling for your vets? And do you have any guidance or personal development classes just for vets?
We do not. We used to have a counselor that came in about 4 hours a week. With the budget cuts, that's no longer there. I still do referrals to him because if anyone knows about the GI Bill, it's complicated. So writing up an education plan is really beneficial for the student to be done the right way the first time. So what was the second question?
Do you have any courses dedicated just to the veterans for like guidance or personal development courses?
No, and that's what I wish we had. When I got out of the service back in 2000, we did a TAP class. That TAP class was just overwhelming. It was too much information. I was with older veterans that were going back to the workforce. They were talking about resume writing, insurance, things like that, things that I didn't really care about. So I got lost with all the information, overwhelmed. So I wish they would have separated the veterans that are going back to school versus the veterans going back to the workforce. So to me, that would have really helped a lot. Having a class, kind of like a college life success class, geared just for veterans, I think it would be really beneficial. And I think Sierra College has something like that, or do you?
I can speak to that.
Okay.
I have a question. How do you, with your veteran center and your services, work with classroom faculty? Because I think as I chat with people here and in my own district as we're trying to embark upon, facilitating a greater number of more robust services, but it seems that it's a natural draw, so to speak, for the student services side of the house, but it seems that often what's absent is the instructional side of the house. So I'm wondering how you engage with the classroom faculty.
What helps a lot is if you have student panels that talk to the staff and faculty. We had a panel where we had veterans discuss their situations, what they went through. I had one student who said he doesn't ride the bus to school. He'd rather drive himself to school because he was an IED. IED exploded when he was in Iraq. So he's not going to be confined in a space. He'd rather be on his own. It's eye-opening. That's why I'd rather have students up here than us, because their stories are amazing.
I wonder if we should go through the presentation, then we'll take the questions at the end.
Okay. Yeah. Well,
Dan, good job. I want to just echo what Jane just said. If we can hold some of the questions to the end, because there's some great panelists, but I'm looking in the crowd at some of the institutions, and they may have the answers as well. So if that's okay with the crowd, we can kind of hold some of them, unless there's something very specific about one institution. Let's move forward. I want to thank you, Dan. You did a great job. What I want to point out right here is how we interact It's very different because the diversity of the panel, and that's what Mike set up. You have a certifying official, a classified staff member, a faculty member, and then an administrator. And we're going to speak about it a little bit differently. So some of those questions about instruction and maybe faculty, I think Jane might be able to speak to a little bit better. We have our different expertise, and that's another reason why I'd like to, if we could hold them to the end. I look at things very differently on the dark side in administration. So one of the things that was spoken to was the counseling, and I want to hit on that very quickly because we have a full-time counselor that our academic senate actually voted for. They pushed it through the system. They believed in it. We built a coalition when they went through their voting process and our system for hiring new full-time faculty. We were able to get that. We validated, we showed the need. Any of you who are administration or in counseling, do we have any administrators or counselors? Okay. If you use a scheduling system such as SARS or any computerized scheduling system, you can look back and look at student IDs and see how many veterans you are seeing. You can either counsel them by committee or you can have an expert. I'm an administrator. I look at it and I see how many hours were given up per week and per year for our veterans, and it validated not just one counselor but 1.5 because the students were being seen anyway. That's the validation for having your counselor. You want to make sure they're accurate, just like your athletic counseling, just like your DSPS or EOPS, it needs to be accurate. These are the most regulated students on our campus. No matter what you hear about athletes or anything else, I was an athletic counselor in the past. This is the most regulated student on our campus. We have to understand that. It's also it's one of the student groups that has the most challenges and barriers to overcome. So you couple those two, and if you don't have specific services, some of them will be funded by your institution. Very few will. As you heard the lunch speaker, it's about building partnerships. And that's what I want to get to with Dan. He did a great job in covering kind of the specifics of what the center looks like, and Butte does a wonderful job. I'm going to talk about partnerships. Who do you need to bring in to create your Veterans Resource Center at little to no cost to your institution? The VETS program, actually, I'll talk about this first. If you see over here this memorial, this is our Veterans Memorial. It's right outside the President's office, which is really nice, so you can point to it whenever you're asking for anything. It's about $400,000 memorial paid through private donors. The students and the faculty created it. They built it themselves. We have faculty that actually do lectures inside there. We talked about the instructional side. You build a culture on your campus, no matter what GI Job says, because you filled out a form, that doesn't really rate you as a veterans-friendly institution. Your culture on your campus and your vets will tell you if you are or not. There's a lot of people that have these nice little plaques, but they really don't mean anything in substance unless your students say it means something. They're the clientele. So if we look at the active duty personnel, dependents, and veterans, it's a little bit over 1,200, but this is self-reported. And you have to understand, as we talk about data elements and all this stuff, it's all self-reported, so it's the best we can do. It's not a clean science. We don't have it down to a clean science yet in our system, but we do the best we can with CCC Apply. We're relying on that student. If they don't want to self-proclaim that they're a veteran or what have you, they don't have to fill that out on the form. They can skip that. The VA benefit recipients, we're pushing 500 now. This is kind of an old slide, but we're pushing 500 now. We are just north of Camp Pendleton, so we're mostly infantry Marine, but we see men, women, all ages, all conflict eras, and a lot of non-combat vets. For what I heard something from one of my Marines recently, that for every combat veteran that's actually in the field, there's 7 support staff behind them. Now, when you're in theater, there's still trauma, but you do have to understand that we have a lot of non-combat vets at our campuses. Their transition is going to be different. It might be different branch to branch. It might be different because of what skills they came into the military with. How long does it take for you to go from civilian life to becoming a warrior? Who knows that? Boot camp. How long does it take? What's that? 13 weeks. Yeah. It's usually 3 months you're looking at to become a warrior. How long do you have to go through the TAPS program to transition to go from a warrior to be a civilian?
I had 2 weeks, but now it's
You had 2 weeks? Yeah, usually I hear a few days if I'm awake for it, And that's no slam on the TAPS program or Department of Labor, but we are now the transition program. We are the community colleges, because what's their other option? With no employment out there, or little employment, and folks that some of them won't want to touch unemployment benefits, they want to go back into school. Why are they coming here? Upward social mobility. They're looking to get a college education to go on and get a career, to make more money and have a higher socioeconomic status than they did before joining the service, okay?
Ignorance. What is TAPS?
TAPS, Transition Assistance Program. It's run by the Department of Labor, and what it is to turn you into a civilian. You never heard of it? Okay. Yeah, you could probably hear commentary when we do the student panel. That might be a great question to ask how they feel about TAPS, because I never went through it. I'm a civilian. You know, my brother's Army, my father was Navy. I'm a civilian, so I didn't go through it. I just go by what my students say. They're big boys and girls, and they can teach you well as an institution. So TAPS is how they turn you into a civilian. Anyway, our Vet Center opened in fall 2009. Since our Vet Center opened, there are 14 other Veterans Resource Centers in Region 8 alone. So when you talk about 20 statewide, there's a lot more, but the problem comes, what is a Veterans Resource Center? How do you define it? Is it one office with a certifying official? You know, if that's what you think a Veterans Resource Center is, go ask your students what they think. They'll be the ones transferring schools. We've had some recognition, which is really nice, but that's not what it's really about. Internal partners. You need to create your coalition internally. That's instruction. That is DSPS. That is the health center. We have 3 examples just in this group that I know personally of a health center hosting the Veterans Resource Center, of a DSPS program / tutorial center hosting it, and then we have a set-aside at Saddleback. And you know what? It works exceptionally well with all of them because it's about the people, not the place. Don't get hung up on what your square footage is. Don't get hung up on where it is located. Get it done. Once you get the space, your community will come in and support you. Your students will come in and support you. Don't even worry about the funding. Just get it done. Get your space, and then work it out after. Square footage is the most important thing you can do, okay? This is just a few of the internal partners that are pretty darn important. One of the things is student payment and financial aid. I want to hit on this because this was something that has come up a couple times, and it's really starting to irk me. And I don't have a problem saying my opinion. So when you're going through the TAP program, when someone's transitioning out of the service, right, what should you be doing in that maybe 3-month or 1 week or 6 months terminally, wherever you are, and you know you're going to go back to civilian life? What should you do? There are 3 things that we say you should do at Saddleback College. And we've created outreach forms. It's on our website. You can go steal it or liberate it, whatever you want to call it. Take our information. We love to share at all these colleges. 1, do your Vaughn app. Get your Vaughn app completed. It's basically start your VA benefits. Certifying officials could talk about that a little bit more. That needs to be completed before you walk onto the community college campus, or at least you need to be familiar with it. You need to know what that is to start your benefits. The other, financial aid. Get your FAFSA completed. Fill out that FAFSA. Get the process started for financial aid. And the last one is apply to a college. Whether you're going to go there or not, you as the active duty service member should be applying for college so you know what the process is like. So you take away that confusion of the bureaucracy. But we say you need those 3 steps before you're even discharged. If you do those things, you're going to be in a lot better standing than the person that shows up 2 days before classes start and you haven't completed any of those documents. You're not going to be waiting for that check in the mail when you can't pay your rent. Veterans can attest to this. Speak to your vets about what they think you need. But when we're doing outreach or recruitment or whatever you want to call it to those military bases, you need to be saying those 3 prongs. Apply for the college, community college, 95% of the time, FAFSA, and get your VA benefits started, okay? I want to hit on a couple things for those of you that didn't raise your hand with administration, and I'm going to teach you a little bit about administration. It's not always about the good feel. Sometimes it's about the dollars and cents, what makes sense to the local community. So, you know, we talk about serving those who have served us. One of the ways you can use to leverage to get support for your Veterans Resource Center is using the examples of some of the other institutions who have raised more money by having a Veterans Resource Center than they actually had to invest in to create their Veterans Resource Center. Saddleback's a great example. We run on a budget of $10,000 a year, and we serve 1,200 student veterans. Why? Because we have the community support that comes in. We have donations into the foundation account, our nonprofit, and then we're able to pay student salaries out of it. We make full use on the campus of VA WorkStudy, and there is not a 1 per 100 requirement. You know, continue to contest that. There's not a 1 per 100 requirement for VA WorkStudy. VA WorkStudy is probably the best transition program you could use on your campus, and it costs your institution nothing. Okay? The other thing that I want to talk about is the 43,000 number that Mike pulled up a little bit earlier. What does that equate to statewide? 43,000 students. And those are just at the community colleges. Let's say the average housing allowance is $2,000 a month. That's about $90 million a month of federal dollars coming into the state. Let's go through the school year. That's almost $1 billion to the state of California from the federal government. Now, from a macro scale, does that have an impact on our community, especially in these economic times? Sure as heck does. California can't print money. So when you go to your legislators or your local elected officials, bring those type of numbers. And yeah, you can use approximations. That's an approximation. But the economic impact to your local community of serving veterans is massive compared to the investment. The investment, because there's existing services out there that you bring on campus, it's huge. Let me move on to the next slide. I can keep going all day with this. External partners, health services. We often talk about, do you have clinical psychologists on campus? Do you have mental health on campus? How do you get this done? If you don't have a grant writer or a robust health center, how do you get these things done? This is how you get it done. There are services out there in the community. There are great examples of other institutions using county mental health. We actually, because our program grew so much, the Orange County Vet Center, which provides counseling therapy, they actually moved from Garden Grove 30 minutes down the freeway to across the street from our house. They built up a site across the street from our vet center. Where we live, they built it across the street. So what we do, we don't have to provide that type of service to our vets because it's right there. They do Friday morning runs. They hire our students to do work study in their counseling therapy center. All their records are held aside from the VA system, so it can be confidential. So we figured out a solution without cost. It didn't cost us a cent as an institution, and we're providing great counseling therapy for our vets. Support groups at night, camaraderie, connections. But here's a few other examples of that. You use what works in your local area. Everything's localized. Other external partners. You need to know what transfer universities are veteran-friendly, not by GI Jobs, not by some rating system. Your student veterans will let you know once they transfer what they're doing for them at their institution. This doesn't come down to how many units do they accept on a transcript. This comes down to service and supporting them and walking them through certain processes. Your transfer institutions, especially those private ones, for-profit or not-for-profit, aren't necessarily the boogeymen. Some of them are actually great universities for exactly what your student's looking for. It's all going to be different, and the counselor really should grab hold of this. The big thing that I want to touch on is the yellow ribbon thing. We talk about that a lot in the veterans community. Yellow ribbon means if you're an institution, a private institution, and you give $5, the VA will match it $5 over the $17.5 they already give. So whatever contribution you make, the VA will match that. Now, schools will put a big yellow ribbon and put their flag on, saying that they're yellow ribbon, yet the vet still may have to pay $10,000, $12,000 in the tuition, because it doesn't necessarily mean that they're full yellow ribbon. So you as counselors, make sure you understand what full yellow ribbon means. It means the veteran will not be paying a cent out of their pocket. They won't be taking those loans. They won't be taking any money out. Okay? That's some of those transfer institutions. You need to worry about that. The biggest one I want to stress right now is jobs, and I love this. I put it down there, the wristband of the, 100,000 jobs wristband that Jane's sporting right there. We need to partner with our businesses. They love this. It's great for their marketing, one, but it's also the right thing to do for them. And our vets, why are they at our institutions? Like I said, it's upward social mobility. Some of them, it is their option. There isn't another option. But the vast majority is for upward social mobility. It's for jobs. It's for a career. We need to start at the community college level building those bridges for internships, for mentorships, and for careers. And you know what? How much does that cost us? Do we need to use our career center for that? No, there's an EDD one-stop. There's CalVet Job Corps. You got a Chamber of Commerce in your local community. Why not bring them into your vet center and say, you know what? Each of the Chamber of Commerce members, you can get a free internship with a very, very qualified young man or woman that's very mature. We'll link you up with them. We'll vet through them and give internships. Make that linkage. It costs nothing to you as an institution. But that's one of the big things I want to stress is employment is really why the majority are there. And then the last one, I believe, is your external partners with building camaraderie and helping with that pipeline. I had a beautiful visual given to me by a recon Marine that did 3 tours, Afghanistan, the Horn of Africa, and Iraq. He's what they call a war hammer. He's a beast. An amazing, sharp gentleman. Finished up his bachelor's degree. And he said, you know what? I grew up a missionary. I grew up in the island life as a missionary for years. So I had this interesting exposure to society as I came back. So I felt the same exact thing when I came back out of the military. I walked in, and it was like never going into a shopping center in my life, but walking into a Walmart and trying to figure out how to find something. He said there were so many options, I had no idea what to do or which way to turn. I didn't know where to go. That's our job as they come out after TAPS, is navigating that for them, helping them navigate. We talked about career assessments, potentially. We talked about Boots to Books courses. You know, as you said, it would be great to have those courses. You know what? There's more than a dozen of our community colleges that offer Boots to Books. Go out and find them. Citrus College, Saddleback College. I don't know, just
Pasadena.
Pasadena. I'm teaching one at Golden West this spring. There's several institutions that offer these. So no, it's not out of the norm. And you know what? Does it cost your institution a cent to offer that course? No, because those students are already taking some courses. So you just funnel them into one section and focus it, just like we do with Puente, just like we do with some of the other special populations. Okay? We also, you know, as we talk about that, building the camaraderie, I look down these lists. Service organizations, American Legion. We have volunteers from American Legion in our vet center. We worked with the CSEA. We make sure they don't do bargaining unit work, but they sit at the front desk and they shake hands, say, hey, thank you, welcome, you know, come on back. It's vet-to-vet service. The local community members are able to give back to their college campus. The last one I want to touch on before I move on, because I don't want to manipulate all the time, AMVETS. One of the things that there was an organization that we worked with, and it really, really cleaned up certain processes. You have a lot of vets that have disabilities. They may or may not know they have disabilities. They will get a rating as they get out of the service, and disability rating may or may not be correct. We often find that with our combat vets up at Saddleback that they're rated very low or not rated. And they go on in. They say, well, what do? We set them up with an appointment with a service officer from AMVETS. For our institution, that works. Some, it may work with the county service officer, which would be great. But finding a service officer to come to your campus, they help the student vet navigate the VA system and appeal that disability claim. Now we're realizing, wow, this guy's really good at it. So he's actually on, 12 campuses now, John? 25. Okay, I cut him short. But I still get my Fridays at Saddleback. He's on 25 campuses now. Some of them are, once a month or twice a month, something like that. But he's on 25 campuses doing the same thing. You know what it's costing the institutions? $0. Do you know the benefit to that local community in the economy because of that? Significant. What about that one vet's life and their family? That means the world. That could have saved them. That compensation and support they got with that disability claim is huge. The last thing I'll touch with that is we realized we weren't getting the veterans into DSPS. And we actually had some set aside DSPS hours because we were able to do that. I oversee DSPS as well, so I could do that. And we said, wow, why don't we just put them in the same office, or different office, but same area in our vet center as John. When they come in with their VA claims, their VA paperwork, here's my verification disability, John, help me out. John goes through the disability claim, walks them next door, and sets them up with the DSPS counselor to get their accommodation in the class. Now, did it cost me anything to switch days for that counselor and make sure that counselor could set up accommodations for veterans when we had a hot, live audience ready to go? No, but it closed the loop so accommodations were set in the classroom. It's these simple solutions to complex problems. It's partnering. It's finding relationships. I'm gonna pass it on to Jane here, but I do want to give a plug for, there's a couple Region 8 institutions in here, and I really want you folks to look at, we might not have the best thing for your institution, but maybe your next door neighbor does. Start talking to your other colleges and find out what works best for them, and find a like-kind institution. And ask them. Don't reinvent the wheel. We're not that smart. Go ask someone else what they're doing. Jane, floor is yours.
So I guess I'm going to be batting cleanup for the boys here. I actually was wondering if Terrence noticed my founding date on this. Did you see the date?
March?
oh, so I knew he was going to catch that. It's actually March of 2010. It just feels like it's been around a lot longer. The reason we're laughing about that is his program started before our program started. So he gets the first VRC probably in Region 8, I'm thinking, or did somebody else claim that?
You know what, a couple months before Citrus opened theirs, and they're
Okay.
a great institution as well.
Okay, so I had to start, and what I'm going to do is some of my slides I'm going to go through really quickly because a lot of what they're doing at Saddleback, we're also doing at Santa Ana College, and you guys have an opportunity to go through the PowerPoints and see that. And I want to make sure we leave some time at the very end for you to ask questions. But I want to show off our space. But before I do that, actually, as he mentioned, I am a counselor. I'm actually a counselor assigned to EOPS. But I'm very fortunate. I have a director who used to oversee veterans at San Marcos and is very supportive of me continuing to work with the veterans. So I'm also a counseling liaison for our veterans. But this is a fairly new role for me. I just started as a counselor in August. Prior to that, I was on the dark side. I was actually the associate dean who oversaw disabled student services, psychological services, and our health center at Santa Ana College. And about 3 years ago, I went to a Road Home conference, and I walked away very changed. I knew that we had to start a VRC on our campus. Came back, and fortunately, we had an administration that was supportive of doing that, although we had no money. And I was told, actually promised, I would not see any money. But they said, if you can come up with something, Jane, we'll make that happen for you. So yes, we did make it happen. Let me tell you a little bit about how we made that happen. Sorry, my clicker's not working very well. So fall of 2011, just to give you an idea, we have 616 students that are self-identified as veterans. That does not mean accessing benefits. We currently have 400 that are using benefits. 70% increase, and again, that's very consistent with what we were talking about earlier across the state. Somebody asked about what we see numbers-wise. I'm expecting them to just continue to increase. We're already seeing huge numbers coming in for the spring of new students. So our VRC was founded in March of 2010, and the way we went about putting our VRC together was we actually worked with our financial aid office primarily. In our DSPS office, some space opened up because a tutorial program was cut. And so, I mean, it was sad that it was cut, but we immediately squatted that area. Now, for all of you out there who say you cannot put a VRC in a DSPS office, guess what? You can. Everybody told me they'll never come in, they don't want to be part of DSPS. I've not had one veteran say anything about where we're located, not one. And if anything, our VRC has brought new life into our DSPS program, because DSPS, if anybody out there is in DSPS, you know, was just hammered 2 to 3 years ago. We lost so much staffing. It was just miserable. So now we coexist quite nicely in a shared space. We also worked a lot with our counseling division to try to continue to support our veterans. But again, no additional funding. One of our key partners that we did is we coordinated with Orange County Mental Health. We actually have a representative coming out 12 hours a week, working with us on making sure that our veterans are accessing other resources, and also helping with us in identifying the students that are actually at risk and helping transition them. Again, how much did that cost for our partnership with Orange County Mental Health? Nothing. The one thing I will tell you is if you're working with any kind of mental health, especially county mental health, it's a long process. You've got to be patient. It took us about a year to hammer out a very easy MOU, but it was well worth it, and we're now, you know, really moving forward. And we named it the Drop Zone, so I love that name for our Orange County Mental Health Peer Mentoring. Can we go to the next slide? Okay, so our VRC, this is just a sideways view. We actually have 5 computers. We have a printer. We have a little office space. We currently, our staffing is, we have a full-time certifying official. Is there anybody in financial aid from here? Anybody in financial aid? Okay, don't tell my financial aid director, okay? But we were a little bit sneaky. What was happening was originally 2 to 3 years ago, about 3 years ago, what was happening is our veterans were going up to financial aid and trying to get certified, but they didn't have their ed plan. They had not registered at the college. They needed all of this help, and our poor financial aid office was just getting completely overwhelmed. And I'll be honest, I was a little opportunistic. I said, hey, why don't you send that person down here? And they can share space, and we'll have other people help with all those silly other problems that you're running into. It worked incredibly well, because we do have our WorkStudy Veterans. If you don't have WorkStudy Veterans yet, get them immediately. It makes all the difference in the world. So we brought down the certifying official 19 hours a week. We are now up to 40 hours a week, and we needed it. So we currently have 5 work-study veterans. We're about ready to add another one. We do sometimes have part-time counseling hours. We're working very closely with our counseling division to make that happen. And again, the Orange County Mental Health Behavioral Health Specialist, 12 hours a week, and our DSPS support staff, who are always available. I want to talk a little bit about resource development, because here's what I hear consistently. Well, if I had money, I would build the program. And I'm going to tell you right now, they're not going to give you money to build a program. You've got to build something. You've got to build something, because they're just not going to give you the money. So again, we started with our community partnerships, but there's also some amazing grant opportunities out there. Now, if anybody out there is a grant writer or you have the ability to do that, that's a great way to go. I'm looking back at Nancy Montgomery, who pulled down one of our FIPSI veterans programs. I mean, that's awesome funding. I also know some people are sitting out there with this look on their face going, I don't write grants. Our resource development office is not going to write us grants. So let me tell you, there's also fundraising opportunities. So as I said, we started our program with no money. But I quickly realized I need some dollars. I've got to have some dollars to buy, like, paper. And I mean, I begged and borrowed from other programs, but there is a point where you need just a little bit of money. So we decided to do a fundraiser for our campus. I don't know if you can go to the next one. So I don't know a lot about a lot of things, but I know about wine and food. And I know that people like to eat. So I was able to do a fundraiser our first year of having the program together. We did a Soldier to Scholars event. And actually my other military guys, I know soldiers is Army, but they all liked the acronym and they were okay with me using that term. So we did our first Soldier to Scholars event and we raised $6,000. And I was so excited because there was no money out of pocket. And I thought $6,000 sounded awesome. And we also got a donation from our foundation. We got an additional $1,000 from our foundation to thank us. So that was pretty awesome. So 2011, we decided to do Soldiers to Scholars again. We got support, and again, one of the big things is when we did our first fundraiser, we had over 100 faculty from our campus. Oh, probably, no, I'm sorry, more like 70, because there was other people there too, but we had about 70 faculty from our campus who came. And it was amazing the interest it generated. We had several of our veteran work-study guys there. We also did a video, and what we did is we showed pictures of our men and women in service, and then we showed them also pictures of them in college. And we just had that video streaming. And it's an incredibly powerful tool. Any one of you guys can put that together, and it really tells an amazing story, because they'll be like, that guy was in my political science class. Oh, that girl was in my humanities class. It tells an amazing story. So 2011, we went back, and we raised over $100,000 for our veterans program. Same event, just pumped up a little bit. And I wanted to point out a few things. What's really interesting, so we had a lot of our volunteers come. Actually, in this lower corner here, that's our president who's pouring wine for the event. Up here, we have our dean of counseling who's pouring wine. Financial aid director is drinking, probably because of me. And then our board of trustees, student representative, is also a veteran. He was one of our speakers, and I'll tell you what, he brought the house down. I mean, it was amazing. So after the event, you'd think all these donors would be running away from us because we just pulled all this money out of their pockets. We actually had most of our donors come back and say, are we doing this again next year? So we're really happy. And what I'm telling you is the money is out there. After this event, we also had Union Bank approach us and say, remember you mentioned fiscal literacy and you're worried about these guys? We'd like to give you $10,000 to do fiscal literacy. And we'd like to give you more next year. So again, start small. A little $5,000 fundraiser, you never know where that's going to go, the interest it generates. And I'm begging you, because again, I'm nothing spectacular. When I started the Veterans Center, it was just a dream to make something happen. And if you build it, they come. Right now, our Vet Center is hopping. It is busy all the time. And I just see us growing and growing and growing. And once the ball gets rolling, it's very capable of happening. I would encourage you guys, I know we talked, you know that there's a student panel right after this. Please go. They tell the story so much better than we do. And you'll go back and you're gonna make this happen. Each and every one of you have the ability to do something at your campus, whether it be policy, whether it be resource development, whether it be teaching a class. You have some capacity to make change, and we need to do this. So anything I've missed? I don't think so. Should we open up for questions? Okay, now we have questions. actually, the first event we did, we got the wine, actually, both of them we did. Okay, first time, we got it donated by a faculty member's husband who worked in the wine industry. He donated it. Second time, we had a hotel that donated it. And then the food, we actually initially approached a restaurant that's in our local area, Memphis Cafe. So if you guys are ever in Orange County, go to Memphis. So initially I approached him, I said, could you guys maybe do some cheese and crackers or something like that? And he said, how about if we do hors d'oeuvres? In fact, let's do Spanish wine and we'll do tapas. And they did an amazing menu. The second time, because it was so much bigger and they're not a huge restaurant, they put in a bid at cost. So we served over 200 people 8 courses of food, and I think they charged us like $2,500. And that just covered their staff, and they had staffing and everything. I mean, we poured wine, but they did all the food, they did everything. So Memphis Cafe rocks. I mean, they're amazing. So yeah, first time around, donated.
And was this at your school or a different location?
We had it, initially we had it in an art gallery. Our school had rented a space in an art gallery. Second time we did it at our Sheriff's Academy. And they do have a wine and, they have a liquor license, or they have whatever they're supposed to have. Something so we could pour wine. We can't sell it, but we could have people come. And if anybody's interested, by the way, we're part of Region 8, both Terrence and I are in the same area. We'll share anything. If there's something you want from us, if you want PowerPoints, you want pamphlets, you want how to do, we'll give you anything you want. And that's how we've always survived. We laugh because when we do presentations, you'll see PowerPoints. I'm like, that's my slide. Or it's like, that's his slide. I mean, that's just how you are. And you'll see anybody working with veterans, we just want them to be successful. I don't care if they're at my college, your college, well, not his college, because we compete a little bit, but you know, we want them to be anywhere. We just want them to be successful.
Can I add to a point that she just made? There was something that Jane said that's very poignant. This is a call to action. It's becoming a movement now, and we're having a larger and larger divide between our military population, our prior military, and our civilians. It's less than 0.5% that are serving right now. It's a very, and they're very concentrated. We're closing bases all over the nation. And so the cultural divide is growing. What are we going to do as civilians, or some of you prior military, what are we going to do to address some of these issues? And I really mean all of us. I know great, exceptional programs on college campuses that were started by very lower range classified staff members that may have felt disempowered before. They weren't the power player on the academic senate. They weren't the president of the college. But you know what? They made the biggest difference because their heart was there. What I ask is that each of you go back to your campus and you make that change. It's up to you. Do you really, you know, that vet that had to sleep in a dugout hole in the desert to keep you safe, you know, they made that sacrifice. What sacrifice are you willing to make to serve them coming back? It can be any one of you. It doesn't have to be an administrator, a faculty member, or a classified staff. It can be anybody on your campus. You just have to have the heart for it. So, I know Mike wanted to have folks come up and actually speak into the mic so we can get it onto the video, and then we'll answer with this mic up here.
You can come up if you'd like, or if you're not comfortable, just raise your hand and I'll bring you the microphone. But we want to hear everybody's questions because we're trying to capture this.
Yes, I have a question as far as work studies. What are the requirements or what steps you need to take to create those positions within your veteran resource centers?
Are you saying to establish work study at your campus?
Yes. To
You have
create those positions, because from my understanding, I believe you need to have a federal employee or some sort to.
You have to submit a
these,
request to the VA.
Okay.
And they have the website that gives you a manual. You have to give them a job description, what the VA students, work studies are going to be doing.
Okay.
And that's all you need to do. Submit that to the VA and they'll approve you.
So you don't need any VA rep or anything there. It's just.
Well, you do need sometimes like certified official or something to
Okay.
be in charge of the work studies, yes.
Okay.
I'd put it this way, you need a supervisor.
Okay.
Because the cool thing is they just changed that recently. Before, they were very limiting about what the veterans could and could not do. And now they're really saying, if you're serving a veteran, and whether that be outreach or other things. So before it was just if they were helping with benefits, but now they're really opening the doors. So you can have them doing outreach and helping them enroll and helping them apply for benefits. I mean, it's.
Yeah, and actually Mike sent out over the listserv the new clarification on that probably, about a month ago. If you aren't part of the listserv, the all-vet listserv, please get on that. If you aren't collaborating in your region, please collaborate and email each other, because This just got sent out over the statewide listserv
Okay.
and then out to the regional reps. Please ask whoever is the certifying officials at your campuses to send that on to you so you can learn a little bit more about that as well.
All right, appreciate it, thanks.
Yeah, before the next question, let me add to that. My email address is up here along with the other panelists. The Chancellor's Office maintains several email lists. I'm sure many of you are familiar with those, and if you're not, feel free to send me an email. But we have one that is for veterans. We have a financial aid, DSPS. We have a Vet All email listserv. So if you're not on the Vet All listserv, please join that. The way to join that is through your campus administrator, and I have instructions that I can email out pretty easily. So if you have any questions on how to join that, send me an email and I'll get that out to you. Next question, I think, was right here.
I'm very new to my position in Veteran Services, but a priority for us is establishing a VRC. We're just beginning the conversation. One of the first challenges we've found is the conversation, if we establish a space for our veterans, then all of our other groups will also want a separate space at the same time, or an equal space, or a different space, or an additional space. Did any of you have that challenge, and if so, how did you deal with it?
At our we had the same thing. We had a couple people ask that question, and we've not had any student group pushback. So I don't.
I've heard that from other campuses as well as the reason not to act. That's a reason not to act. They're creating an excuse. And I'm not pointing fingers or anything, but to me, that's not justification to not serve a population. And this is how I want to lace it in. These type of programs where you can create a community area for any student group, why would you not do it if it's not going to be a major expense to your institution? The initial GI Bill, if you look back and read your history, that's what started career services and student services on our college campuses. It was the reintegration of the World War II vets. That's what was happening. And we can use these models, pick them up, and actually maybe give them to some other student groups as well, and create student services through community collaboration and not direct expense to the institution. So would that be a fear of mine? No, that would actually, if another student group came up and said, hey, we want an EOPS center, I would say, I'm all for it. Let's find some community partners and support you from the outside community. I think that'd be a great thing.
Hi, my name is Kathleen Cronin. I'm a Learning Disabilities Coordinator at American River College in Sacramento. Thank you to all the panel and for you, Dan, for serving. And I am specifically interested in, are any of the centers you've created doing anything in the way of testing students for possible learning disabilities? My thinking is a lot of folks went into the war zones, into the military with underlying learning disabilities, perhaps right out of high school. Okay, now they come back, they're in our programs, in our colleges, and trying to reach that group and help them be successful in their classes.
I'll answer for us, and again, when people initially heard that we were setting up a VRC in our DSPS office, they were like, that's not going to work. It works, and the better part of it is also it is exposing them to DSPS services.
Right.
And we also incorporate it, for instance, in we do a veterans orientation, and I talk about support services on campus, I talk about DSPS, and I talk about learning disabilities. Right. And I say, it actually would make sense that some people who have learning disabilities might join the military because as smart as you are, maybe you weren't able to achieve academically. And so it's funny to hear them ask the questions. Again, they're around our staff, so they can casually ask the questions, and it's been very successful for us. Again, the biggest fear that they run into is if I get tested, who's going to get this information? Mm-hmm. How is it going to be used against me? We talked about the Kurzweil system. We actually will scan books and give them to the veterans, on a temporary level just to see if it helps them. It's kind of nice for them to say, wow, this really works. Maybe I should get tested and see what's going on. So we've been we've done really well.
I'd say you have the best practice.
Great. Thank you. That's a wonderful idea. Appreciate it.
Do we have any more questions?
It's really not a question, it's a follow-up on that question that came. One of the things we do at our campus, all of our students, whether they're veterans or not, take our assessment test, right? Many of the counselors are sensitive to looking at the results and seeing disparities. If we see a significant disparity between reading and writing, for example, that becomes, for us, a red flag, and we do one of two things. One, we either refer the student to our Office for Students with Disabilities, or to our academic skills specialists. They're an excellent resource for a number of things. One of the things they do, of course, is help students establish a pattern or a method for being able to adapt their learning style to the teachers. But also, they help identify where a possible disability might exist. That's an easier referral for many students, especially veteran students, who might or might not think they have any kind of a disability, either prior to military or as a result of their military. To make that, so I think using those folks in the Learning Center, at least that's where ours are located, is another resource. The Learning Center itself can become a real valid, a really important resource for students with that kind of issue.
You know, can I hit on another issue that is somewhat related? We're talking about, you know, the masses of students coming in, whether they're general students or this specific student population, and there's going to be students of all kinds that have various disabilities, various backgrounds. The question was asked about the population growth among veterans earlier. And I want to touch on that because our policies locally and statewide and federally affect that. There's so many variables in this population growth. I agree with Jane, I agree with Mike, we're going to see a continued growth and expansion of student veterans within our state, but our policies sometimes work against that. So we were talking about being veterans friendly as an institution. Look at your policies. Priority registration is one of them that just changed up to 4 years after discharge. Frankly, that's not enough. If you're healing from a disability, or if you may have had a disability prior to service, there may be some things you're going to struggle with, and you need that priority registration longer. If you need to heal after your service, if you just take time off and work, why should we not be giving this very prescribed student group, they have a prescribed set of courses, why should we not be giving them priority registration for courses? It only benefits that student, the college, and the local community. That's one of them. The other is the residency one. We're seeing a lot of students getting driven out of our public institutions in the state because that residency window for in-state tuition fees is only 1 year. So there's some variables that come up that might affect the growth. And it's because the GI Bill 2.0, it just changed. And you know, we're looking at break pay issues, different things. I can't 100% say it's going to continue at the same growth. It will grow, but there's so many variables.
We got 2 more questions. Come on up here. We can't make it all the way to the back.
Well, this is just more of a comment for those of you who may not be aware that all of the chapters of the GI Bill have a tutoring component. So a lot of people don't know about that, so they don't know to take advantage of it. Students, veteran students are able to get up to $1,200 per year. It has to be approved tutor and so forth, but a lot of people don't realize that, so they don't establish what needs to be put in place on their campus for the students to get those approved tutors. So just wanted to make sure that you were aware of that because that's an extremely valuable resource.
Thanks, Terry. That's great. We have another question here.
Yeah, just going back to the policy question, I think having the one-on-one to help people is really key. I wouldn't wait for policies to change because that's tough. I came to California after the Vietnam War, and I wasn't a resident, so I had to wait a year. But you know what? I worked that out, and I think mainly I just had to sit down with people and say, okay, this is the deal. This is what you got to do. Plan A, da-da-da-da-da-da, you know, and it worked, and I started going back to school in the GI Bill back then. So it's sometimes you can change policy, but again, let's be proactive. Let's not wait for the policies to change. Let's help guys work the problems.
I'm with you.
Yeah.
I had one more comment. I know that earlier you had mentioned about faculty and staff training. What we've been doing is we do flex day activity almost every semester, and we don't have a huge number that turn out, I'll be honest. I mean, there's 5, 6, 7 faculty. Seems to be different faculty every time, and we always have a panel of veterans. I have 3, I always go grab my WorkStudy guys or grab a couple of other people, and it's amazing what comes out during those sessions. So any opportunities to train, also making sure that you're on committees and that you can speak about veterans issues. And I feel like, I thought for a while they were going to, put a leash on me because I was being such a pit bull. Every place I went, I kept like veterans. But it finally makes a difference in thinking about policies and procedures. So I think just education is important.
really quick. We had that same problem, and what we did was to make sure we had a panel the day the president was speaking. So we knew that staff and faculty had to show up to hear the president, so they'd hear our veterans as well.
And on that note, I want to jump in. We're actually out of time for questions, I'm sorry to say. But speaking of student panels, I know it's Friday afternoon. I've been to conferences that ended on Friday afternoon, and I really wanted to sneak out early. But I implore you, please don't sneak out early. We're having a student veterans panel now next. It's back in the room where we had lunch. It's going to be one of the best things of the day. So thank you very much for being here. Thanks again to our panelists. A round of applause. How about for them?